My name is Lucas Miller. I was 10 years old that day. It was a regular Saturday in Houston, Texas, and my parents decided to take me to Herman Park. The sky was clear, the birds were singing, and there was a light breeze that made everything lighter, more alive. I felt invincible. I ran toward the lake while my mum packed the picnic, and my dad set up the volleyball net with the other parents. I remember seeing a boy flying a kite, a couple exchanging engagement rings, and an elderly man feeding the ducks. It was a perfect day, until it all fell apart. There was a small hill near the bike area. I wanted to skate down it. It was new. My dad had given it to me for my birthday. I climbed it excitedly, my heart pounding with excitement. But as I launched myself down the hill, a rock, so small, so insignificant, got in my way. The wheel locked. I flew. The blow was dull. I don't remember feeling pain, just the sound of people screaming, running. I saw my mother coming in despair. Then there was silence. The world seemed to shut down for a moment. Everything went dark. When the paramedics arrived, I was no longer responding. They say my heart stopped 6 minutes. 6 minutes in which the world thought I was gone forever. But little did they know, I was about to see something that would change my life, and maybe yours too. There, between life and death, the most incredible journey of my existence began. If you want to know what happened to me on the other side, get ready. This story isn't just mine. It's about you, your life, and everything you believe to be real. And if this beginning touched your heart in any way, leave your like now and subscribe to the channel. This helps the message reach those who need to hear it. Let's go together until the end. The last image I had before everything went dark was my mother's face running towards me. Her eyes, a desperation I had never seen before. Her mouth screamed my name, but I couldn't hear it anymore. The world had turned off. What no one knew at that moment was that my body was motionless there on the floor, but my soul was no longer there. While the paramedics did everything they could to revive me, something inside me watched from above. I didn't understand. It was like I was dreaming, except everything was so clear. The colors, the sounds, the feelings. I saw my own body lying on the grass, my chest still. I saw the firefighters cutting open my shirt with scissors, giving me cardiac massage. One of them said, "We don't have much time. Come on, kid. Come back to us." My mother was on her knees, hands shaking, praying out loud. My father was pale, still, with a blank stare. He couldn't speak. He just kept mumbling, "No, no, my boy. Please, God, please, no." For 6 minutes, the clocks kept ticking here on Earth, but for me, something much bigger was about to begin. In the ambulance, they tried to resuscitate me. They gave me adrenaline, shocks, and shouted my name, but nothing. The nurse who was holding my hand started to cry. They were going to declare me dead. But that's when it happened. The moment time seemed to have come to an end. Something pulled me, like a strong but calm wind. I was taken to a place where there was no pain, no sound, no weight. It was like floating in an ocean of silence, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something I couldn't explain, as if love had a form. I tried to understand where I was, but there was no ground, no sky, no walls, and yet I felt no fear. I felt a peace I had never experienced here. But that was just the beginning. As my family mourned my body at Houston Children's Hospital, my soul was drawn to a place that defies everything we know, and that's why I need to tell you what happened. Because what I saw will change the way you view life, death, and even your cell phone. Yes, even that. I know it may sound absurd, a 10-year-old boy having a vision that involves modern technology. But wait, because nothing happens by chance. And Jesus? He didn't appear by accident. He had something to say, something urgent. Something that, if you're willing to hear it, could transform the way you live and what you value. This is not just a story about me. It's about you, too. Floating in that space between worlds was strange. I couldn't feel my body, but I knew I was me. There was no ground beneath my feet, no air around me, but I was aware of everything. And what struck me most there was the silence. It wasn't the silence we know here. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was a silence that had weight, that enveloped, a silence that was full, almost as if it was waiting for something. There, time did not exist. I don't know if I stayed there for seconds or centuries, but I know that at some point I began to feel something new, a presence. I didn't see anyone right away, but I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. That's when the darkness began to move. It was as if the darkness itself were opening up into cracks of light. And from those cracks, I began to see scenes, moments from my life, not like ordinary memories, but as if I were watching it all from the outside. I saw my first day of school, my father teaching me to ride a bike, my mother hugging me after a fever. I saw my dog, Charlie, who had died the year before. He ran toward me for a moment, and then he was gone. These visions pierced me with an indescribable force. They weren't just images, they were feelings. I felt my father's love again, my mother's fear when I was sick. The silly happiness of receiving a simple gift. I relived it all, but with more intensity than I had ever felt before. And then I saw something else. I saw myself on the couch at home, with my cell phone in my hands, for hours, ignoring my sister wanting to play, ignoring my grandmother asking for attention, ignoring the real world, and I felt a pain. It wasn't guilt, it was an emptiness, a silent regret. That was the first time I felt like I was being watched. The silence that surrounded me seemed to ask me, "What did you do with the time you were given?" That question burned inside me, because even at just 10 years old I understood what it meant. It wasn't about what I had achieved, it was about what I had missed out on. Then the darkness began to fade. Little by little lights appeared. It was a soft light that seemed to come from inside things. It was beautiful, but also frightening, as if I were entering something much bigger than any child could bear. It was at that moment that I felt him. I haven't seen him yet, but I felt his presence. Strong, immense, warm, but at the same time imposing, as if all the answers in the universe were within him, and yet he was waiting, as if to say, "Not yet. First you have to see." The silence turned to expectation, and I could only wait. The light grew like a silent tide. It didn't come from any one place. It seemed to rise from deep within me, as if a forgotten part of my soul was awakening. And then, finally, I saw it. A golden field opened before my eyes. The grass shone as if each blade had been made of liquid light. The sky was an impossible blue, deep, like an upturned ocean. The air was not air, but something lighter, purer. Here, I did not breathe. I simply existed, and that was enough. I walked without knowing how. There was no weight on my feet. I felt a lightness that I had never experienced on earth, and in the center of that field, there was someone waiting for me. His back was to me, tall, surrounded by a light that changed colors subtly, like an eternal sunrise. I couldn't see his face yet, but my heart, if I still had one, recognized it. It was him, Jesus. Not like the pictures I saw in churches, not like the stories I heard in catechism class. He was so much more. His body seemed made of real things. His every move had purpose, love, and power. A calm power, without imposition. A power that did not need to prove anything. He turned around, and when his eyes met mine, everything stopped. There were no words. There was no sound. Just that gaze that pierced my very essence. There he saw everything, every thought I had ever had, every fear I had ever hidden, every good thing and every wrong thing I had ever done. And yet, that gaze did not condemn me. He loved me. Without a doubt, without hesitation, completely. I knelt down without understanding why. It was an instinct, a natural response to something infinitely greater. I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. There was nothing to say. He just reached out. And in that simple gesture, I felt everything. Forgiveness, acceptance, call. Yes, because I realized I wasn't there just to be comforted. There was something he wanted to show me, something that would change everything. Jesus led me to a kind of mirror, but it wasn't glass, it was like a living window onto the earth. I saw people, many people, thousands. Their faces were tired, their hearts were empty, but their eyes were fixed on screens, cell phones, computers, TVs, all connected and completely alone. And then he spoke. His voice didn't come from his mouth, but from inside me. He said, "Technology is a gift, but it has been used as a prison. Human beings have moved away from the soul trying to reach the world." I trembled. Jesus showed me children eating dinner in silence with their parents, each on their own device, couples who touched less and scrolled more, young people who measured their worth by likes, not love. And then he looked at me. "You need to go back, Lucas. They need to listen." I wanted to stay. with all my strength, but something inside me knew this was not the end of my journey. It was the beginning of something much bigger, and it was there in the golden field before the one who is life that I accepted. I agreed to carry the message, but I didn't yet know the price it would take, nor how much the world would resist the truth that he revealed to me. If I could show you that look, as just that look, you would understand everything. Jesus didn't need to say much. His presence filled everything, but it was his gaze that made the greatest impact. He looked inside me like someone opening a forgotten book, reading each page carefully, without rushing, without judgment, and for the first time I felt ashamed. Not for what I did, but for what I didn't do. I stopped hugging my mother anymore. I stopped looking my sister in the eyes when she spoke. I stopped being present, because I was always distracted. That look showed me how much time was wasted, and how precious time is. Jesus did not speak with anger, nor with sadness. He spoke with a gentle firmness that made everything tremble without raising his voice. "They have forgotten the value of silence," he said, "the silence that connects, the silence that listens." And then he showed me something that marked me forever. It was like a timeline made of light. At each point a choice, small everyday decisions that led to two paths, one of real connection and one of isolation. And I understood. It's not the big acts that define who we become. It's the small moments ignored by distraction that shape the heart. I saw a boy skip playing with his dad because he was engrossed in an online game. I saw a girl ignore a love note because she was busy doing little dances for the internet. I saw people cry alone while the world revolved around likes. And Jesus, with a calm voice, said to me, "They are hungry, but they don't know what they are trying to feed." That kept echoing inside me, as if each word was a seed, growing there inside my soul. And if I can ask you one thing, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt like you were present but absent? Have you ever missed out on a real moment because of a screen? Your story can touch someone, and it can be the beginning of a change. Jesus continued to look at me, not with a demand, but with an invitation. Go back, tell them, teach them to look again. I meant, but I'm just a boy, but he already knew. And yet, he trusted me. So I accepted. I just had no idea that the road back would be so difficult, or that the world out there would be ready to hear me, or ready to silence me. When I agreed to come back, I didn't imagine it would be so brutal. It was as if I were being pulled into a whirlwind of light and sound. My body felt heavy, fragile, hot again. I heard distant voices, medical alarms, screams. My eyes fluttered open, and my mother's face was the first thing I saw. It was wet with tears. Her hands trembled on my chest. She whispered, "I'm sorry. He's back, my God. He's back." The medical team was in shock. My vital signs were normal. The boy who had been declared clinically dead for 6 minutes was back. The living were crying. Skeptics were shaking their heads, but something inside me knew this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, as I recovered, the vision I had kept running through my mind. This was more real than the hospital I was in, and no matter how much I tried to explain, no one seemed prepared to listen. I started slowly. I talked to my parents, my grandmother, the hospital chaplain. Some cried. Others just looked at me, as if listening to a child's fantasy, until someone, I don't remember if it was the nurse or a cousin, recorded a video of me telling part of the experience. The video was posted on YouTube. Within 2 days, there were millions of views. People all over the world commented, "Miracle, vision of heaven, he saw Jesus." But the others came too, skeptics, mockers, angry atheists, influencers saying it was marketing, that my parents were exploiting my imagination. I started appearing on TV shows. People asked me questions like, "Lucas, do you really believe that Jesus showed you the future of humanity?" And I would answer, "I don't believe it. I saw it." And then came the most tense moment. During a live interview on a national television channel, I was asked to explain exactly what Jesus said about technology. I took a deep breath and repeated the words, "Technology was supposed to unite souls, but it has imprisoned hearts." The presenter paused awkwardly. The director whispered something into her earpiece. Then, with a smirk, she abruptly ended the interview. That same day, some of my videos were taken down. People started saying that my story promoted spiritual alarmism. That hit me. I was just a boy. I just wanted to obey. I just wanted to pass on what I saw. But I realized that the modern world didn't want to listen. It wanted comfort, not confrontation. That's when I realized the judgment wasn't just in the words. It was on the screens. The same screens that connect us to the world also distance us from the truth. And I understood why Jesus showed me all this. He knew the message would be difficult, that many would try to silence me, that the modern world is too fast to listen, but he also knew that some, a few but real ones, would listen and change. Maybe you are one of them. I thought I had seen it all, but Jesus hadn't shown me the most important part yet. The night after my first TV interview, I went to bed early. I was emotionally exhausted. My parents tried to protect me, but I felt the weight of every look, from those who believed and those who mocked. It was that morning that he returned. This time there was no golden field, no silence. I was taken directly to a kind of groundless place where images formed in the air, alive, pulsating. It was like watching the future, but feeling each emotion as if it were my own. Jesus was beside me and simply said, "See what comes if nothing changes." The first image was of a modern home, children in their rooms, each with a tablet, parents in the living room, each on their own cell phone. No sound, no laughter, no conversation. An entire family disconnected, even though they were together. Then I saw schools, distracted, apathetic students, dependent on devices to feel alive, frustrated teachers trying to compete with algorithms. I saw young people exchanging automatic "I love you" messages without even remembering the tone of their loved one's voice. Everything was fast, everything was shallow. In another scene, I saw hospitals, people getting sick for no apparent reason. But Jesus explained, the body gets sick when the soul is ignored for too long. I saw young people with extreme anxiety, depression, loneliness, even surrounded by followers. And the scariest thing, I saw a child, still small, looking at a screen and repeating without emotion, "I don't need real friends, they abandon me, my game doesn't." Jesus then turned to me and said, "Technology is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is. They have forgotten how to touch, how to look, how to listen, how to feel." The words cut deep. And then I saw what he feared most. I saw empty churches, silent squares, shops without people, digital relationships, disposable friendships, an entire generation searching for meaning in the wrong places. And at the end of this sequence of images, I saw a mirror. I was in it, and behind me, the world in emotional ruins. Jesus whispered, "They will hear you, but you will have to endure." I cried. I asked him to change it, to do something. But he answered, "True love doesn't force, it shows and waits." That was the role he gave me, to show, to wait, and to trust. I came away from that vision with a heavy chest. I was just a 10-year-old boy trying to warn an adult world that had lost its way in its own inventions. But I knew, even if just one heart awakened, it would be worth it. And maybe that heart is yours. When the vision ceased, I found myself again in that place between worlds. It was neither the golden field nor the darkness. It was like a decision room, a space of absolute silence where time seemed to wait for me. Jesus was there, but closer now, not as a distant figure of light, but as someone who kneels before a child to speak eye to eye. He looked at me, and there was something new in his gaze this time. Not just love, there was pain, and there was urgency. "You can stay, Lucas," he said. "Here, there is no pain. There is no judgment. Here, there is peace." At that moment, everything inside me wanted to accept. The lightness of that place, the absence of the weight of the world, the love that enveloped me completely. But then he completed, "Or you can go back and remember everything and tell them, even if they don't believe you, even if it hurts." It was there that I realized heaven is not just a destination. It is also a mission, and I had to choose. I was afraid. I was a child. I wondered why he hadn't chosen someone older, wiser. But then something happened. I saw my mother's face, her smile, my sister's laugh, my father's hand pushing me on the swing, and I felt a calling greater than myself. "If it helps someone see, then I'll come back." That's what I said, and he smiled. But Jesus warned me, "You will carry memories that many will deny. You will be called a liar, a madman, a manipulator. You will lose friendships. You will scare adults. You will confuse children. But there will be those who will listen. And they will change. It was a high price. But something inside me, something he put there, gave me strength. Then Jesus came closer and touched my chest with the palm of his hand. It was as if all his light entered me. My eyes closed involuntarily. And before everything disappeared, I heard one last sentence, clear as the sun. Remember, Lucas, speak with love, even when the world screams with hate. And then I fell. It was like waking up from a deep dream with the weight of 1,000 truths. I sat up in the hospital bed with a start. The monitors beeped, nurses rushed in. My parents came in screaming with excitement, but I was silent because I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I had made a choice, and now he had a mission. The next day I asked for paper and pen. I started drawing what I saw, writing what I heard. My parents thought it was just part of the recovery, but I knew it was the beginning of something much bigger, something that would only make sense when it reached you. Coming back to life wasn't like opening your eyes and smiling. It was like carrying an entire world inside my chest, while everyone around me expected me to act like a normal child. At Houston Children's Hospital, I became the miracle boy. Nurses came to see me with bright eyes, as if I were proof that the impossible was possible. My parents didn't know whether to cry or smile. The hospital chaplain would sit with me for hours, listening silently as I tried, in the words of a 10-year-old, to describe the indescribable. But there was something that no one saw. Each night, the visions came back, like fragments of something bigger, the gaze of Jesus. The isolated families, his voice echoing inside me, speak with love. I knew it wasn't just to remember, it was to warn. Over the next few months, I returned home. My routine seemed normal: school, meals, curious visitors. But I was no longer the same Lucas. I couldn't look at a group of kids holding cell phones without seeing the emptiness in their eyes. I couldn't watch parents ignore their kids at dinner without feeling the same weight of that question. What did you do with the time you were given? The message burned inside me. I started writing down everything I remembered, not with fear of forgetting, but with the responsibility to preserve. My mother found one of my notebooks and, without telling me, took a picture of one of the pages. He posted it on Facebook with a simple caption, "Words from Lucas, after the coma." That night, the text spread like wildfire. Thousands of people commented, shared, cried. Some said, "This is poetry." Others said, "This is a divine warning." And then everything exploded. I was invited to tell my story at a local church, then another. Soon, pastors, journalists, and even artists began to seek me out. My name was circulated on programs, podcasts, and documentaries. People wanted to hear me, but listening is not always the same as understanding. The more I talked, the more I noticed two types of reactions: those who were moved and those who scoffed. Many said, "It's just an overactive imagination," or "a kid indoctrinated by his parents." There were theories. There were attacks. Some said it was all marketing. And yet, I kept going. Not for fame, never for money, but for that choice made on the golden field, for that silent promise, and most of all, for you. Yes, you who are listening to this right now, because on some level, your heart recognizes that there is something wrong with the world, that there is a void growing at the speed of digital connection, and maybe, just maybe, a 10-year-old boy who saw Jesus has something to say that can help you remember what's most important. Life has not returned to normal. It turned into a mission. And even though I still played video games from time to time or used my cell phone to talk to friends, something in me was never lost. The clarity of what I saw and the urgency to say, "You still have time. Use it well." It was strange to realize that the world saw me as a symbol, a miracle boy, a chosen one, a child prophet. But inside, I was still just Lucas, a boy trying to understand why God had entrusted something so big to someone so small. At age 11, my routine resembled that of a mini-celebrity. I received invitations from TV shows, huge churches, universities. My parents, although reluctant, allowed me to speak, but always with caution. I never wanted fame, I never sought attention. All I wanted was for people to understand what I saw. On one of these trips, I remember being backstage in a packed auditorium. The presenter came up and said, "Luke, if possible, avoid mentioning the part where Jesus criticizes technology. It may sound controversial." I smiled politely, but inside, something tightened. How can I tell the truth, omitting the very part that Jesus asked me to deliver? That day I ignored the request. I went up on stage. Lights, cameras, hundreds of people watching. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a second and said, Jesus showed me a world that was connected but empty, where people forgot to touch, to look, to listen, where technology has become a substitute for love, and that needs to change. Some applauded, others didn't. I saw uncomfortable adults, confused young people, but I also saw shining eyes. I saw people crying silently, and I understood. Not everyone is ready, but some are. And for those, I continue. Over time, my story reached places I never imagined. A documentary on a streaming platform, a book written with the help of a Christian journalist, and a video in which I recounted in my own words everything I saw. That video reached millions, but the hardest attacks also came. Atheist influencers made videos ridiculing me. Articles called it a classic case of child brainwashing. Social media profiles created montages to humiliate me. At one point, my parents considered taking me out of school. The pressure was too much. It was then that my mother, sitting on the porch with me on a summer evening, asked me, "Son, do you still want to go through with this?" I looked at her, took a deep breath, and replied, "Mommy, I didn't choose to be famous. I chose to be faithful." She cried and hugged me as if it were the last time, because we knew the more I talked, the more discomfort I caused. And yet, something greater guided me, something that no amount of internet hate could erase, the living memory of that gaze, his presence, the golden field, the mission. It was at this point that the media began to change its tune. They began to paint me as a risk to impressionable young people, a kid too influential for his age. And with that came the lockdowns, event cancellations, posts deleted, videos taken down. But even with all this, I continued, because I already knew the truth does not need to be accepted to be true. It just needs to be said. I thought the hard part would be being heard, but I discovered that the most painful part was being heard and still being ignored. As I grew older, doors that had once opened with enthusiasm began to close with silence. It wasn't immediate. It was subtle. First, interviews began to be rescheduled. Then came invitations that were cancelled at the last minute. My name went from miracle to controversy. The tone of the media changed, from adoration to distrust. Maybe he just wants attention. He is repeating what he heard from his parents. It is dangerous to let a boy talk as if he were a divine messenger. And the hardest thing of all was realizing that most of the people who listened to me, in fact, didn't want to change. They wanted to be emotional for a few minutes, share the video, comment amen, and move on with your life the same way. They let their cell phones vibrate with notifications while they heard my voice saying, "Disconnect to reconnect with the ones you love." It was like screaming into an LED-lined abyss. I was once invited to speak at a conference on spirituality and youth. It was my chance to reach people who, theoretically, cared. I got up on stage, opened my notebook, and began to talk about what Jesus had shown me. Couples who sleep side by side but don't talk to each other. Children who are depressed because they don't reach digital standards. Adults who spend more time with avatars than with their children. And then a woman in the audience raised her hand and said, "Do you think the problem is cell phones? The problem is humanity." And I replied, "Exactly. Humanity has forgotten how to be human, and screens have only facilitated this forgetfulness." The silence in the room was like a sentence. There was no applause, just blank stares. People uncomfortable with a truth they could no longer ignore. That night, back at the hotel, I broke down. I cried like never before. I wanted to give up. I wondered if I had interpreted everything wrong, if perhaps I had made it up, dreamed it, raved about it. But then, before I went to sleep, something happened. The same presence, the same silence full of meaning, and inside me, the same voice. Keep going, even when you don't want to, even when it's in vain, because every seed you plant grows in its own time. I understood there that it wasn't about changing the whole world. It was about touching hearts, one by one, like Jesus did. And even if the whole world closed its ears, if one soul listened, just one, it would have been worth it. So I continued, with fewer cameras, fewer invitations, more resistance, but with more faith. Because when you look into the eyes of Jesus, there is no more room for doubt. Doubt may scream, but the truth whispers, and it remains. I was 18 when I decided it was time to stop talking, not because I no longer believed, not because I had given up on the mission, but because I realized that sometimes silence says more than any speech. That year I was invited to the biggest talk show in America. It was a golden opportunity. Millions would watch. It was the kind of opportunity that anyone in my position would have jumped at. But I was reluctant. There was something inside me, a weight, a warning, the feeling that this would be the last time. I accepted, but on one condition. I wanted to speak without interruptions, without cuts, without editing. Just my voice, my truth, one last time. On the day of the interview, the studio was packed. Lights, cameras, makeup, production. But I didn't see any of that. My eyes were focused on a much greater purpose. The presenter asked me, after introducing me as the boy who said he saw Jesus, "Lucas, after all these years, you still stick to the same story?" I looked straight at the camera, not at him, not at the audience, for you. And he said, "I didn't tell a story. I delivered a message." Jesus showed me a world where technology unites, but also separates, where love has become an emoji, where children grow up without seeing each other's eyes, and where the soul is being silenced by the noise of notifications. Silence. I continued, "I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm here because I made a choice at age 10, before the one who knows the beginning and the end. He showed me that we're not wasting time with screens. We're wasting life." The presenter tried to change the subject, but I held the microphone firmly. "This is my last interview. After this, I will shut up, not because I have given up, but because I have said everything that needed to be said. The seed has been planted. Now, it is up to you." And then I looked at the camera one last time, my voice breaking, and said, "Turn off your cell phone. Look into the eyes of the one you love. Ask how their day was. Really listen. Hug tightly, because one day, it could be the last time." That night, when I left the studio, I didn't give any interviews. I didn't take any pictures. I just handed an envelope to the production team, asking that it be read at the end of the program. Inside was a letter, handwritten. It said, "If you are reading this, it is because you sought something beyond the ordinary. I was just a child, but I saw what many don't want to see. And even if the world forgets me, if you remember to love more than post, to feel more than enjoy, to live more than pretend, so it was worth it. I don't want followers. I want you to follow what matters." Lucas Miller. After that night, I disappeared from the spotlight. My social media accounts were deleted. My name disappeared from searches. Some say I went to live in a remote place. Others say I joined a spiritual community. There are those who say I died young. But the truth is with you now, because the message was never about me. It was always about you. If you've made it this far, to the last second of this story, then maybe, just maybe, something inside you has been touched. It may have been a chill, a lump in your throat, a different silence in your heart, or even the voice of God whispering between the words. And if you truly felt that, then I need to tell you, this message was for you. Subscribe to the channel now. But not as an automatic gesture, but as a commitment to something bigger. A commitment to continue listening, feeling, and reconnecting with what really matters. If this video spoke to you, don't ignore it. Leave a like. It's more than a button. It's a way to spread this truth, to make it reach other people who, like you, are looking for something real. And I want to ask you something very simple. If you stayed this far, if you listened to each chapter, comment below. I heard. There's just 2 words, but they show that you didn't just listen with your ears, you listened with your soul. And that makes all the difference. And now the next video is already appearing on the screen. Click on it. Continue this journey. Maybe the next answer you are looking for is there, and remember, the truth never stops here.